as men can we be better partners? Because sometimes it's not really clear. No one teaches us how to be a good partner. No one teaches us how to be a good lover, how to be a good boyfriend, how to be a good husband. No one teaches us this, right? We absorb things through our own childhood, watching our parents, and we unconsciously just reenact those things. And that's something that's really important, right? We absorb so much from our parents and we reenact it. No matter how much we try not to, we do. Something we get into in our relationships is, we might be trying to impress. We might only see our role as something like providing, like financially. This is something a lot of the men that come to me is they grew up in houses where all their dad did was provide house and money, and it was very good, right? They're good at providing. They have great jobs. They have multiple businesses, all these things, but they never taught the skills in the other aspects of what it means to be a good partner. And we're living in a day and age where men and women, to be honest, right, and predominantly women in my eyes, are wanting more than what their parents had, right? Their mothers had in particular. Because when we think back to our mothers, right? Those of you that, your parents were together, it's like they want more. The women in their lives want more, right? They want more than what their mothers had, right? So that's meaning that the women in life are calling for more, right? You might be seeing this on social media. You might see it inside of the relationships that your friends have. You might be seeing this inside your own relationship. You might see it you might even see that your parents now are shifting and changing because your mother's asking for more. We're in this age where just providing money and that's it, and providing a roof and food isn't enough. It's not enough. It's not enough as a man to do that as a partner. There's so much more, right? So let me start with the problem, right? The problem being, why and in what ways are you being a not great partner, a not good enough partner, or I prefer to say a shit partner? It might not be shit, but these are some of the small things that we do, right? Emotional absence, right? You might be physically around, like there on the dining table, on the sofa, but emotionally, you're just this empty thing, this empty void. You're not really there. You're not really supportive. You're distracted. You're on your phone. You're thinking about work, right? And this just lands as someone who isn't there. Like, you might feel you're there physically, right? Because maybe you had a dad who wasn't there physically, right? So you're like, well, I've done better than him. I'm here physically. And great, well done. That's good. But there's more to it, right? Than just being there physically while you're looking out the window, you're thinking about your day, you're thinking about other things, and you're not really with the people you're with, right? Another way is this kind of defensiveness. You're trying to shut down any conversations or anything that feels uncomfortable. You're just not really, there for conversation. You're defensive, you're shut down, like all in them ways. And maybe sexually, you're not really there in your relationship. Maybe you're really into this kind of performing. There's men we're taught to perform, especially in the bedroom, that, everything from the size of our penis to how long we last to being the most important things. Right? You're not really there. Again, you're just there in this kind of ego sense or the way you think things should look. Yeah. As another thing as well that a lot of men I speak to is they are very concerned. One of the problems they have in not being great partners is they're very concerned with how things look to the outside world, not how things are actually in their home. Right? So this kind of keeping up with the Joneses and so forth. It could be materialism, like, being really concerned about the car you're driving, what the house looks like from the outside, or the holidays you're on. This over focus on money, this over focus on what things look like, and not really putting your attention on the kind of, what's it called? The substance. Some obvious ones are, being really lazy around the house, not contributing to kind of household chores, or not doing anything in the house, like not supporting, never hoovering, never cleaning, never organizing the cleaner, always leaving all that to your partner. And this is especially burdensome if both of you are working, right? Somehow you're working and they're working, but you're not taking care of that kind of emotional labor, right? And it could be that another issue is emotional labor, but not so it's the social labor. So like organizing day trips for your kids or for the two of you, or organizing your social calendar and, your people's birthday presents and stuff like that. Just leaving all of that to your partner and not doing any of that because you just see yourself as this provider and that's it. Another terrible trait of a lot of men that are in relationships that make for bad relationships is just avoiding conflict. Whenever conflict rears its head, they run away, they shut down, they don't want to talk about it. They're just not really there for those sorts of conversations, right? And then not supporting your partner's dreams is another thing, right? I see a lot of problems with a lot of men do. They're not supporting their partner's dreams. They're not really like engaged in what their partner wants, what their woman wants, what she's really about, who she wants to be. Disengaged from it. It's another problem. Another is avoiding kind of any self-reflection. Yeah, this can be a very painful one in relationships where there's a partner who avoids self-reflection. The other person is just left with your unhealed stuff, right? So what does this look like? If you've got these problems, what you're kind of hearing from your partner, you're hearing them complain a lot. You're hearing them criticize you a lot, probably. You might be hearing them compare you to other men quite a lot. You know, she might be going, oh, you know, so-and-so husband does this, so-and-so's husband does that, so-and-so's partner does this, and so forth, right? And you might feel kind of attacked, belittled, and what's the other word I was looking for just there? Like downtrodden, right? And then that could feel like in your relationship, you know, if you're not being a great partner in many ways, distance. You're experiencing distance in your relationship where, you know, you're living in the same house, but you're barely speaking. You're barely having any conversations. You're not really talking about anything important. You're not really engaging in any way. It's a very functional relationship. You know, you do the functional things and she does the functional things. But when you're together, there's a distance on the sofa. You're sit opposite ends of the sofa. You barely really talking about anything important. There's not much laughing or joking or joy. The sex might have disappeared as well. It's another really common thing I find when there's this like partners are not showing up. Intimacy is disappears, right? So now we've kind of set this scene of like what it can look like and so forth. Let's dive a bit deeper in some of these points, right? So something I see habitually in men is this reactivity, this emotional piece, we call it, right? This emotional piece about being reactive. So we are operating from this kind of way in which we have all this kind of unhealed wounds and pain have happened to us in our lives. Maybe we had a mother who was prying into our lives, or maybe we felt rejected as young boys, right? For example, there's just two little examples. So when we're in our family home or with our partner, little things happen and your wife, your partner might say something to you and you feel rejected, right? You might not notice you feel rejected, but you react as if you're being rejected, right? You might get defensive. You might shut down. You might walk out the house. Like you might get stroppy. You might act like a small child. You know, an example can be that, you know, you bring some sexual advances, for instance, to your partner one evening, and she says no, she's not in the mood, she's tired, it's been a long day. Yeah. And instead of being understanding and maybe even bring in an alternative, you know, a massage or whatever, you react with defensiveness or frustration, you know, kind of childish frustration, like, oh, you always do this. You never want to have sex. I'm so fed up of this. I should just go and cheat on you with someone else, you know? Now, you might say that out loud, right? But that might be something you also just think in your own mind, right? Because you might think it in your own mind, which, you know, having thoughts is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because we have thoughts, right? But those thoughts might lead you to shutting down and just rolling over and not talking and, you know, not really being there, disconnecting, yeah, stonewalling or something like that, right? Or criticizing her maybe, yeah, the counterattacking that we see sometimes when we get defensive or we feel rejected, you know, that, you know, I see this a lot in dating. When a man is rejected in a bar or club, instead of taking his rejection, you know, graciously and like, oh, thank you very much, totally understand or whatever, he starts attacking the woman and telling her how ugly she is or unattractive she is or how she's going to be alone forever or something like that. Yeah. So for you in your partnership, that might be you criticizing your partner, you know, you're telling her that she's a disappointment in some way. Yeah. And that's a really toxic thing to do in your relationship, right? And it might feel like you can't operate any other way. It might feel very automatic to be reactive in this way, right? Or the reactivity for you might be being asked to do something around the house, you know, being asked to, I love using the dishwasher, unpack the dishwasher, for instance, around the house. And you might react with, but I, you know, God, I'm out slaving all day working. Can't you just do it? Or it might be you're asked to take your kids somewhere, or she might ask you to organize a date night. And instead of, being like, oh yeah, something I can do, it's just reacting and being like, I'm tired. I've got too many things to do. Yeah. Is that seeing this reactiveness that happens. Or you're in a discussion about something and you feel like you're being attacked. She's critiquing you, or she's saying something you haven't done very well. And instead of listening, your first thing you do is react. The first thing you do is defend yourself, criticize, or something like that. Yeah. So it's seeing that there's all this reactivity happening, and these little things might seem like minute things, but if they're constantly happening, they're constantly happening in your home, it creates this emotional distance between the two of you, right? It's this big emotional distance between the two of you, constantly happening between the two of you, right? And it just destroys the connection, between two people. Really destroys the connection between two people. So what can you do? We need to start coming into a position of response, right? Meaning that when you're talking to your partner, you hear them, right? And they're speaking to you. And you can observe the emotional reaction that's arising. I can observe there's a part of me that wants to get really defensive, or there's a part of me that's wounded because I have a story around being not good enough, or that I am lazy, or whatever it is. It's definitely something that I experienced being told a lot as a young boy, right? And instead of reacting to that story and reacting to those feelings in the moment, just there in front of your partner, is to actually listen, listen, like, where's what they're saying true? If they're saying that you're emotionally checked out, or you don't pull your weight, instead of defending yourself, stopping and pausing and taking in those words and going, okay, where is that actually true? Actually, I don't actually do that much around the house. It might be a moment there of being like, you're right, actually. And I'm really grateful to you for all that you do around the home, or, what it may be. And your partner might be surprised by this new type of way of reacting, right? Sort of disagreement and this escalating fight that happens when we're in this reactivity. Because when we are both reactive and start getting defensive, things just escalate. It just escalate and becomes a really big arguments, really big ruptures that are very hard to kind of bring back together, right? So what can we start to do? So we have to start to really pause and notice, right? Have the capacity to notice, like, oh, actually, I there's some reactivity here. I get very reactive when people say things to me. I take it very personally, even when my partner's talking about other people. She might be talking about someone else's partner, husband, and the great things they do, or something that, she saw on TV. And you hear that as some criticism of what you're not doing, and you get reactive. That's another way we get reactive, just hearing good things said about other people. So if that's you, right, and you want to listen to what I'm saying here, not from the point of view of like, no, this is all wrong, this is useless. It's like what I'm saying is true. Where is it? Where do you see it? The little nuggets that this actually happens, right? So in these moments, you want to just pause and listen and hear what's being said. Yeah. And a really easy thing to do is just to, instead of trying to respond, reject, be defensive, counterattack, is just to repeat back, to paraphrase back what was said to you. Because this gets you out of your thinking and your story and your emotions and keeps you in what's being said to you. Yeah. And then allows you to have the space to respond to that, see where that's true, take a breath, slow down, hear your partner, right? Because also part of this reactivity is this assumption that maybe your partner's a nagging person. Are they always nagging? That's just what they do. I don't need to pay attention to this, right? But that also creates a disconnection. So the key here is like, be here to listen, be here to understand, so you can respond from a place of spaciousness, not from a place of being full of all your ideas and judgments and defensive and stories and emotional reactions and so forth. You want to start to create the capacity to have all those things occur and just observe them and not react to them. Because you think you might be reacting to your partner, but really you're just reacting to the internal story and emotions you're having about what's being said. It's just like being able to be present to what's being said and respond in a way that comes from a place that's grounded and spacious and not just a reactive response, right? That's the key. That's what you're trying to get to. Because this singular point here can transform your whole relationship, right? I've seen this work with men I've worked with inside the relationship. It transforms relationships, right? Because what you're doing here is you're diffusing a lot of unnecessary tension and like stress energy that builds up in the relationship. So when you react, your partner reacts, and then you react, and then it just escalates. Whereas if you can be the one to kind of lead and just go, oh, I'm just going to listen and then I'm going to respond. One person can't escalate things on their own. If you stay calm and someone just keeps responding to your calmness with like escalating kind of charged emotion, there's a point where the differential becomes so great that the other person almost looks at themselves and they're like, what? Why am I even here? What am I doing? You know, you feel like you're crazy. You know, I'm sure you've had this where someone's being really calm and you're kind of like getting really angry, really frustrated. And then there's a moment where you both stop and the other person's being calm and you look at yourself and you're like, what the fuck's going on with me? What's wrong? You know? And you can also regulate situations with your own calm that you bring in.